Today let's talk about Valorant's very own information broker, Cypher, also known as Amir El-Amari. Cypher is one of the first Sentinels in the game, going all the way back to being one of the 13 OG characters who were introduced in the beta. And today we're going to be talking about Cypher and why he's basically been neglected in Valorant. This is the rise and fall of Cypher. I guess at this point, we all know what Cypher does, apart from being Riot's scapegoat. I mean, let's be honest, bro, why do they keep killing my man in these cinematics? They let him pop off only once. But regardless, let's not go into Cypher's abilities because you guys know that. All his abilities are about, retrieving and giving information to his team. Just in case you don't know, his main ability is obviously to place down a camera, which he can access from anywhere on the map. His other abilities include a tripwire, which when tripped, anyone can see through a wall, or your whole team can see through the wall. He also has a cyber cage. This one's a little bit more important because we all know that it's a smoke that plays an audio cue, but a lot of you might have not known that in the beta, Cypher's cages actually used to slow down enemy movements as well, but that was very short-lived as it was soon nerfed to make it so that they no longer got slowed, and that's what we have today, just the audio cue when stepping through it. His ultimate, used on a dead enemy, marks their position on all living players, but it's a pretty quick ping, as most of you know. Now we gotta move back in time when Valorant was first released. The only competition for Cypher was Killjoy, and Killjoy didn't come out right away, right? She wasn't an OG character. She came out later, where the pick rates were actually 50-50 between both Cypher and Killjoy. They both had excellent sight holding capabilities, and depending on the player and the map, the execution was all about your playstyle. And even though Sage 2 was a Sentinel, she was regarded as a healer, but we can't get too much with Sage. She wasn't a competitor to Cypher. She was her own beast, especially early in the day. She's just too unique to compare to anyone, and it's why her playstyle holds strong till today. However, back to Cypher. One of the early metas included something that I like to call a flash and dash, where people would play two duelists, one with the ability to flash and the other being a jet who can dash straight into sight to get more space and successfully execute a plan. This made Cypher a great character because he was able to hold a sight all on his own, buying enough time while his teams rotated onto him. He could gather information early and then use his tripwires to stop an aggressive push dead in its tracks. But sooner rather than later, this didn't matter much because Riot decided to make a little bit of a change where Jet's dash was able to break through Cypher's tripwires. This tipped the scale in favor for Killjoy, where her turret would constantly shoot the enemies, inflicting damage and slowing them down, halting that flash and dash. This was, however, changed in Update 3.0, where Jet was no longer able to break them, just reverting back to the original thing. But all these changes weren't doing much for my boy Cypher, because one more problem with Cypher was that his tripwires needed to be a certain height to really be able to work. Place them too high and the enemies could crouch, playing limbo. Place them too low and they could simply jump. Now, if you just crouch and place a wire at face level, you can fix this, but this leaves it basically to a very specific area, right? There's only so many tripwire lineups, and even those lineups, you have to have the enemy happen to walk through them. Cypher's abilities are also pretty fragile. A well-placed shock dart from Sova can easily break Cypher's cam or tripwires, or even both depending on how the setup is. The best thing is just the cage because it can't be broken. Agents like Sky and Raze can even just break them with their literal abilities by accident. Imagine being a pro Cypher in Iron, and then an Iron dogs out and breaks your entire setup by accident. That shit happens. It's real. But all these downsides are something that was actually known from the start, but Cypher was still played back then. I mean, check out this clip from N3C Nats, one of the best professional Cypher players in the game. Fast forward to June 22, 2021. A new agent was released. My boy, KO. Yeah, KO. Not to mention Chamber as well. And let me just say, my poor guy Cypher didn't just die in the trailer. That shit did not end there, because you gotta add hashtag justice for Cypher somewhere for something like this. Coming back to KO, because it's all about KO here. He was an interesting addition to Valorant's roster due to his main ability called 0 Point. You guys know this. You get suppressed in a quite wide variety. If Cypher happens to get caught in it, everything is disabled. His tripwires are disabled, the same way they do when he's dead. He might as well be dead because literally it is gone. Cypher's defenses became this damn yellow fence. Useless. Absolutely useless. He also can't activate his cam or trigger his cyber cages once disabled. Now, to be fair, this also hurt Killjoy as well, don't get me wrong, but Killjoy was already more popular. Cypher was less popular, so KO hurts him even more. This basically left Cypher with one option: engage in a gunfight, and surely, no matter how cracked you are, even if you paid extra dollars for that shiny 10s gaming mouse, you're not peeking 5 people and getting out of it alive. Now, for the viewers with the biggest brains among you, you might say you can just run away or break KO's dagger. And surely you can do that, but leaving the site means the enemies will have a pretty easy time planting the spike. Keep in mind, at the start of the game, people held site solo as Cypher, and this just made it way harder, because if you gotta retreat or play back, especially if you don't break that knife, then the same thing is happening. You're still nerfing Cypher with that counter. But KO's story was just the beginning. The downfall of Cypher. It was on the day of November 16, 2021, that Riot released a new agent that will change Valorant's metas and strategies forever. Mr. Chamber, aka Vincent Tabron, a French weapon designer who has some very interesting abilities, and Chamber's main ability, Rendezvous, is what made him so popular, especially in the early game. 2 tripwires. Pros like OpticA were the first ones to embrace Chamber and showcase just how powerful he can really be. He can teleport between 2 teleport anchors similar to Yoru, but you know, Yoru's teleport had a longer animation even though he is a duelist. And it takes a while for him to actually teleport. Chamber's teleport is fast, spontaneous, quick, but yeah, I freaking hate Chamber. This allows Chamber to hold really aggressive angles, similar to a duelist like Jet, unlike Cypher, who would just kind of go bloop when dying. But the replacement on Cypher's here is the beautiful tripwires. He used to have 2 of them, and an operator which was super buff because when you killed him, there's obviously a slow field. So you got the same idea. Like Cypher, you're holding back the enemies, you're slowing down their push, but you can even frag out in a lot easier manner. Cypher needed way more brains to frag out, while Chamber just needs aim. And that's not actually mentioning the whole iron concept I said earlier. If Sky sends out a Trailblazer or a Raze Boombot comes out, unlike Cypher's tripwires, they don't interact. The tripwire for Chamber does not get destroyed or interact with stuff like Sky's Trailblazer. That is something huge that people usually end up skimming over. Upon release, Chamber used to have 2 trademarks, but Riot decided to give him a nerf because he was obviously overpowered, and he still has 1, but with all that, he continues to dominate the game thanks to all the other points I talked about. Chamber also has Headhunter, but this is not a Chamber video, but I see you, Riot. We get it. Guns don't kill people. Bullets do. But with all that being said, Chamber the Eco King didn't take long to just start growing in popularity like crazy. If you don't have enough money, if you're living the broke life, no problem. You simply pop your ultimate and you now have the most deadliest, most expensive weapon in the game. It was quite amazing and still is till today. Just imagine being on attack, there's a Jet on one site, holding an operator and a Chamber on the other with his ultimate. You just don't want to peek it. You can double down and hold sites like crazy. All that meant is that Chamber was now a Sentinel that basically replaced Cypher, even if that was not Riot's intention. By playstyle, by graph, by statistics, that's what happened. But it's not over for Cypher just yet. There's been rumors that Riot is thinking about further nerfing Chamber, which is not a bad idea. This will encourage Cypher and Killjoy more. Now, Killjoy also fell off popularity a little bit, but thanks to her base abilities and how she's designed, it's Cypher that's feeling outdated. What the nerf is going to be though is still unknown, but that's still great news for Cypher mains all around. Speaking of Cypher mains, let us know what you think Riot should do to balance him, because he is literally been left to dry. Our boy Cypher needs some sort of buff. Some ideas I thought of is giving him a 3rd tripwire, allowing him to pull back his abilities from any place on the map, because that should make it a little bit easier. Make the camera a little less buggy so you can place it higher up just based off where you're looking, not do some crazy freaking flights movement just to get a decent camera position. Maybe make his tripwires require a couple shots instead of just 1 shot to break. Maybe bring the slow back on his cage, you know, just to compete with the slows from Chamber's, you know, Chamber's utility as a Sentinel, as well as the fact when Killjoy's taking out damage, you don't need to have a slow because people will most likely not run through damage. So there's just a lot of things. Or his ultimate, let it ping 3 times instead of 1, or let it just be a full-on wall hack for 2 to 3 seconds instead of just 1 ping where literally as they're moving, they're already in a different position. position. It's okay, but at high ranks with 5 stack, it's not the most efficient. Our boy Cypher needs almost like a minor rework, but that's just my opinion. I want to hear yours. Because for now, in my opinion, Cypher is left to rot in both the trailers and in game.